Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff, Mosher, Adam Caplan, Greg Cosell back with us again. This is part 2 of our 2-part podcast series where we're exploring the Eagles' 2023 schedule. In our last episode, we went through the first half of the schedule. Now we go to the second half of the schedule, which, you know, if you're an Eagles fan and you're like, oh, yeah, we get to face Sam Howell, and we get to face Matthew Stafford, who's beat up and he's old, and we get to face Baker Mayfield. Well, the second half, they got news for you, man. The quarterbacks change. So we start off right away with the Eagles coming out of the bye against their most recent nemesis, the Kansas City Chiefs, winners of the last Super Bowl against the Eagles, overcame a 10-point deficit. Adam, as we've been saying, it's not the same team, though, from the year before. There are some additions and subtractions, but this one, the coaching staff and the play calling is all pretty much the same, except for the loss of Eric Bieniemy.
Of course, right. Matt Nagy is the OC, but yeah, this game, and both teams have a Week 10 bye. So the Eagles come out of their bye. They play at the Chiefs. Juwan Taylor comes in, making $20 million a year to play left tackle. Rasheed Rice, want to talk to Greg about him because they are super loaded now at receiver. Charles Omenihu is a guy I know Greg's liked, DN, and Nzuki Uzama, who's a guy from nearby Kansas State, who's a DN. So, Geoff, you're right. They definitely added some people. They lost Juju Smith-Schuster. I don't think that was a big deal to them. They did lose Orlando Brown. They get Juwan Taylor in, and Pacheco's at running back is coming off a couple surgeries. So that's something to keep an eye on. But overall, look, it's Andy Reid. They're pretty loaded in the secondary. I know they're excited to see some of the younger guys continue to progress. And Greg, when you look at this game, man, this will be fun at Kansas City. What are your thoughts, though, on first of all, on Juwan Taylor and Rasheed Rice were added to the team?
Well, Taylor may not play left tackle. They have Donovan Smith as well. Yep. Taylor may play right tackle. One thing people may not be aware of about the Chiefs is last year they had the highest percentage of playing with multiple tight ends of any team in the league. I don't think people think of the Chiefs that way. They played with 2 and 3 tight ends at a higher percentage than any team in the NFL. And that's because of the Kelsey factor, because Kelsey can line up anywhere in your formation. So we'll see if they do that again. I was really intrigued by the fact that they drafted Rasheed Rice in the second round when they drafted Sky Moore in the second round a year ago. I don't know what that says about Sky Moore and what their plans are, but Rice is a very interesting prospect. There were times that, watching Rice, that he made me think of DeAndre Hopkins coming out of Clemson. In fact, Rice's combine measurables were better than Hopkins. But I'm curious how their wide receiver scenario will play out as the season progresses. Obviously, this is in the second half of the season. So, again, there could be injuries, but if there's no injuries, I'm curious to see because they still have Kadarius Toney as well.
Yeah, and Justin, who was the Justin that got hurt? Was it Justin Ross that they had that they thought?
Yes.
Justin Ross was a Clemson kid who got hurt, and before he got hurt at Clemson, he was viewed as a potential first-round pick.
Yeah, and then there's Richie James, who had a nice year as a slot receiver for the Giants. I mean,
very nice year.
It feels like the rich got richer here as far as receiving, but you know, maybe more. They all project slot. I don't know, but it doesn't matter because they can make it work in that offense.
And the Mahomes guy's pretty good, I think.
I've heard he's pretty decent. Yeah. I've heard. In fact, we're not going to really spend that much time.
No, I don't think we need to. But I thought that the drafting of Anadike Uzama in the first round was very interesting to me because I personally think I don't believe George Karlaftis is an edge rusher, and I think the drafting of Anadike Uzama, in my mind, kind of says Karlaftis, when we go to our sub fronts, he's going to play inside because Omenihu is a great signing for them. He is capable of playing outside. He's capable of playing inside. He's a really good signing. So their sub front's going to be difficult.
Sure. And then obviously from an Eagles standpoint, as they battle it out to figure out who's going to be right guard, that is going to be a concern for them is when they have to face these good DNs who can move inside and give them a high motor like Brandon Graham has done against teams in the past. So that is something to watch out for.
I have no inside information whatsoever, guys, on this. Well, I shouldn't say that, but it wouldn't surprise me if Tyler Steen is the right guard.
We've discussed that. Now that would be interesting because he has the least right guard experience of it. He has no guard experience, but we agree that you know right now as it looks that he's a strong contender there. Yep. Week 12, So you just get through going to Kansas City out of the bye. Now you welcome the Buffalo Bills to the link for a big game.
You know, and it's interesting. Well, I'll let Adam go first here, but
Yeah.
I've got some strong thoughts on
Okay.
it.
No, it's just going from Mahomes to Josh Allen. It's just remarkable. I don't know how many teams have to have this happen, but it is at least they're coming out of their bye after week 10. So they add Damian Harris because they really want to be able to run the ball better. Not that they're going to be a running team, but when they want to run it, they want to be able to have someone who could handle volume. Dalton Kincaid, who was a major priority for them. Osiris Torrance, who's a guard, and their interior off their offensive line did not play well last season. Poona Ford, I know Greg told us when we did our free agency show, he didn't have a good year. And Dorian Williams is a rookie at linebacker. So Greg, let's talk about Dalton Kincaid. It's a guy that was, I believe, the first tight end drafted. What were your thoughts on him, and particularly going to this team?
Well, it's interesting they're playing the Bills right after they play the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Kincaid can be used stylistically and tactically the same way as Travis Kelce.
Okay.
And now you have a team that played the lowest percentage by far of 12 personnel in the NFL a year ago, less than 4% of their offensive snaps a year ago. Think about that. Less than 4% came out of 12 personnel. They did not sign Dawson Knox and trade up to draft Kincaid to have Kincaid or Knox play 5 snaps a game. So this team is going to play a ton more out of 12 personnel because both Knox and Kincaid, particularly Kincaid, are athletic enough to be detached from the formation and create major formation variation. They also clearly want to change the way they play offensively to some extent in a different way, and that's run the ball more. Because not only did they sign Damian Harris, they signed Latavius Murray. And say what you want about Murray, everywhere he's been, he kind of produces as your secondary back. And Osiris Torrance, who they drafted from Florida in the 2nd round, he's a power mauler much more than a dancing bear. So they've clearly made a decision that this offense needs to change a little bit, because they've recognized, I'm sure, because it's obvious, that as great as Josh Allen is, you can't have your quarterback be Superman every single week. It's just not humanly possible in this league.
Yeah, a little addition by subtraction responsibility-wise there for the Buffalo offense. How about defensively, Greg, with Leslie Frazier taking a year off, Sean McDermott will call the plays. Do you think they'll be much different?
Yes, I think you'll see more blitz. I think you'll see Sean have far more input into what they do defensively. Don't forget, Sean began under Jim Johnson in Philadelphia. I think my guess is, don't know this for a fact, my guess is he probably wanted to blitz more, and Leslie is not a big blitz guy. I think they changed the style of linebacker that goes with Milano because they drafted Dorian Williams, who to me was very reminiscent of Quan Alexander coming out of LSU, those fast, quick, active, athletic linebackers. So I think they sort of changed their approach, and I think they'll be more aggressive. We don't know what Von Miller will be at this point in his career, coming off an ACL. But once he went out, they couldn't really rush the quarterback very well with 4.
All right, we're going to move on to the 49ers, known around these parts as the 40 whiners lately, but we will break them apart in a second. First, we want to remind you Inside the Birds is presented by Ocean Casino Resort. It's the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. And of course, it's Ocean Casino Resort's 5th birthday this summer. They can't wait to celebrate with you. So join Ocean for exciting promotions and sweepstakes, headline entertainment, the best day life and nightlife lineup in AC, the debut of the birthday bar, exclusive local collabs and partnerships, commemorative 5th birthday merchandise, and so much more. Don't miss stunning fireworks and unique events all summer long. Ocean Rewards members will enjoy over $5 million in gifts and prizes. So be sure to sign up for an Ocean Rewards card to get in on the fun next time you visit. All right, Greg, 49ers. Adam, not much changing as far as coaching, right? It's just really they brought in a big addition in getting Javon Hargrave from the Eagles. So maybe they think that turns the tide a little bit. But obviously the quarterback situation is going to be an interesting one there.
Yeah, so Steve Wilkes takes over as defense coordinator for D'Amico Ryans, but they still have the same D front. They still have Chris Kusarek running the front. And Wilkes is a guy that's been around a long time, and I don't expect much to change. The big deal here is that you just mentioned Javon Hargrave's in there. Kinlaw, it's been a disappointment because he's been hurt a lot but they got Bosa, Armstead. I'm interested to get Greg's thoughts on Drake Jackson, who's going to have to play more. The linebackers are back. They were able to get Sean Gibson, I know, which is big for them. Now, the one area where I don't think they're very good is at corner. Although Ward was really good, but they don't have great depth. And Isaiah Oliver comes over from Atlanta. So, Greg, if you're the Eagles and if you can protect, it won't be easy, though the Eagles have a great offensive line. But if you could protect, would you not try to be a little bit aggressive against these corners?
You would think so for sure. Ward is a good player. Lenore actually had a good season last year when he had to play. And he'll go in as the corner opposite Ward. It's the slot corner where Jimmy Ward was there that I think they're going to have to work through training camp to figure that out. Isaiah Oliver has played some of that when he was in Atlanta. I'm not sure that's his best position because of his size, but they'll have to figure that out. We won't. And again, this is a later in the season game, so a lot can happen between now and then. They're counting on Drake Jackson, I'm sure, to take a major step up. He didn't play a ton of snaps last year. They signed Cleveland Farrell, and I think they expect him. And Farrell actually played pretty well for the Las Vegas Raiders last year and played a lot of snaps as the year progressed, playing both outside and inside at D tackle. And my guess is they signed him as a replacement for Amenahu. I think they probably see him filling that role. And like I said, he played well last year. Hargrave, we know about him. Bosa is a phenomenal edge player. Defensively, I think, look, they were good a year ago. I can't imagine they'll be bad. They do have some questions, but by the time of this game, a lot will be figured out.
No doubt about it. All right. Well, week 14 is the Cowboys again, I believe, or is it? Week 14. It would be Cowboys. We already went through them in the last podcast. You can check out Greg and Adam and our evaluation on that. We move on to week 15. It'll be at Seattle, and Eagles at Seattle. There have been some epic games there. Not the same Seattle team, Adam.
No, we talked about Punaport moving on at the tackle. But offensively, before we get to defense, Zach Charbonnet was one of my favorite run backs for the draft. Looking forward to seeing him. Team up with Kenneth Walker. And then the surprising pick to me was Jackson Smith-Njigba, but I think what happened there was Lockett's got a major cap number in 2024, so this could be his last season with the club. And then defensively, what's old is new again. They brought back Jaron Reed at the tackle. Draymond Jones was their big free agent signee. We all liked him. We talked about him on that free agency show. Bobby Wagner's back. Derek Hall's a draftee who could rush the passer. And Devin Witherspoon, the best corner for this draft, at least they thought so. Seattle. So yeah, you said it, man. They got a lot of changes here.
Greg, this looks like a pretty good team, and a lot of people like their draft. I mean, you never know how these guys pan out, and their free agency. We're getting Draymond Jones, who's a guy that you really liked.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see what they do, because last year, I think they were second or third in the NFL in percentage of playing with 12 and 13 personnel. And I can't imagine that you draft Jackson Smith-Njigba, who I really liked his tape a lot, at number 20, to have him play 5 snaps or 10 snaps a game. So I'm curious to see what their division of labor is, so to speak, between 11 personnel and 12 personnel. Because as I said, they played a ton of 12 personnel. The Charbonnet draft pick was interesting to me because after they drafted Smith-Njigba, it made me think, okay, what's their plan here? I don't think he's going to beat out Kenneth Walker. I don't think he's as good a back as Kenneth Walker. I think Charbonnet in some ways for this team could almost be like Alexander Madison is for the Vikings. But defensively, they've got a pretty good group of players now, and I'm really curious to see how this all works out. I really like Derek Hall, their second-round pick out of Auburn. I think he's a really good pick. I actually like Cameron Young as well, their 4th-round pick out of, I believe, Mississippi State, if memory serves me correctly. I watched his tape, really liked him. So, this will be very interesting defensively. This is actually, and again, it's later in the season, but just as we speak now, that's all we can do is speak now. This looks like a pretty interesting team to me.
Yeah, I think Seattle and San Francisco are going to duke it out there to be the class of the NFC West, and there's a lot of good players on both of those teams. So let's move on to our next opponent. It's the New York Giants on Christmas, and then they'll play 2 weeks later. So it's week 16 and week 18. Adam, some additions, some weaponry given to Daniel Jones along with a new contract.
Yeah, and they knew they had to address the receiver position. So they brought in Paris Campbell from the Colts, Jalen Hyatt, who dropped a little bit. They got him in the 3rd round, another receiver. Darren Waller was the big trade. Raiders were shopping him. The Giants were willing to give him what they were looking for as a third-round pick. And John Michael Schmitz is, again, probably the second best center for this draft. He'll come in and start. Okereke at linebacker. And Deonte Banks, yeah, he dropped a little bit further than we expected. They've had a very interesting offseason, no question.
Greg, the one thing that stands out to me about the Giants offense, and, putting Jalen Hyatt aside, because I know he has vertical ability, but you just never know what a rookie is going to be able to do in year one, is that they have a lot of almost an overload of interior receiving weapons, from Waller to Sterling Shepard, I imagine, will be
Wandale Robinson.
Yeah, Robinson. I mean, it seems like they can be a sort of a methodical, move the sticks, deliberately down the field type team if they can protect Daniel Jones fairly well.
I would say yes and no, Geoff, because Paris Campbell, if he can stay healthy, does have vertical ability.
True.
Hyatt has vertical ability. Clearly, that's his game.
Mm-hmm.
Leighton, has vertical ability. Waller has vertical ability. So I'm not suggesting they're going to just toss it all over the yard, but I'm saying that there's a chance here. If you go back and look at Brian Dable's offense when he was with Buffalo, and by no means am I comparing Jones and Josh Allen, but he had some really good intermediate and vertical route concepts that attack defenses. So I think you're going to see those. And again, they still can run the football. Barkley is, I don't think he's a great sustainer, but he certainly is a guy that can carry 250 times. You would expect Evan Neal to be better in his second year. I thought he was very up and down as a rookie. I thought the Deonte Banks draft pick was a great one, given Wink Martindale, because what does Martindale really want to do? He wants to rush the quarterback and play man. And I'm giving the Cliff Notes version, obviously. And I thought Banks was a great man-to-man corner prospect, great press man corner prospect. He had some great snaps, great matchup with Marvin Harrison when they played Ohio State.
And like we said go ahead, Adam.
I was going to say, see, guys, what going forward, Greg talked about the Madden Banks with the Dory Jackson is the final year of his deal, but he's played good football. They're getting a couple guys back from injury. They have Darnay Holmes.
Yeah.
Aaron Robinson comes back from his ACL injury. They got the kid Flott. They added Bobby McCain as a veteran safety with McKinney.
Yeah.
When you go up against the Eagles, you've got to be deep in the secondary because they're going to spread you out. That's an excellent matchup. I like the tactical part about who you mentioned, Greg Martindale versus Brian Johnson, the new Eagles.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, listen, like we said on the last podcast, later this summer, we're bringing Greg back and we're just going to preview the NFC East and get real into the meat and potatoes of it. And we'll start to break down all those big time division matchups as we get closer to the season. The last team on the schedule, the Arizona Cardinals, who do have a new regime in place, and it's a familiar name. Jonathan Gannon's the head coach. Adam, who's their defensive coordinator now?
Yeah,
people still don't know who he is.
Nick Rallis, who's under 30. He's got to be, unless someone corrects me, the youngest coordinator in the NFL. In fact,
I would think so.
Maybe 27 to 28. Got to be.
Right.
Drew Petzing, the OC, who's Kevin Stefanski's guy, who's been a quarterback coach and the tight ends coach. He's worked with running backs. Drew and Kevin go back many years with the Vikings, so Drew was going to call the plays there, and Gannon obviously. Going to be his defense. Now, who do they add on for personnel? Michael Wilson, a receiver from Stanford. Paris Johnson. They don't want to commit to him playing guard because we know if the Eagles draft him, he was going to play guard. Paris Johnson's their first round pick. BJ Ojolari on defense, and Garrett Williams at corner, Greg. So when you look at this roster, Greg, is this a team that could compete? Because it doesn't look very good, at least on paper.
Oh, they got a ton of questions right now. I mean, who's the quarterback for the first 2 months of the season? Can they line up and run the football? That's a major question. They basically have the same running back group that they had a year ago. So they're going to have to be able to run the ball to some degree. Are they going to play a lot with two tight ends? They still have Ertz and Trey McBride. I like Michael Wilson's tape a lot, but, I don't know how much he plays. Defensively, obviously, that's Jonathan Gannon's area. We'll see. It'll be his defense. He may not call the game. We don't know that, but it'll be his defense. And as you look right now, do they have a pass rusher? I don't know. Ojolari, I liked his tape a lot. He was a second-round pick. We'll see how much he plays. But besides him, if you just look at that roster right now, I don't see a pass rusher.
Yeah, they got a lot of questions. In fact, I think the Eagles are going to see this as a gift to be able to play this team this late in the season, especially if they need a win to maybe get the number one seed, or if they're duking it out with Dallas for the division. this might be the right team at the right time.
Although Murray would be back by then, and again, we'll see, how he does when he does come back. I guess, Adam, are they talking October, November for him?
So their hope is that he's back by the end of the month of September. That might be a little bit forward thinking.
So let's say mid-October. So he will have played a number of games and again, I think Kyler Murray is an inconsistent, erratic player, but he's an explosive, dynamic athlete who any given game can be special.
And D Hop is still there because they couldn't find anyone to take his contract. Colt McCoy at 37 years old, which turns in September, could very well be their starter. He's sort of a limited guy, but he's a decent backup. This game should not be close. They just don't have enough talent. We'll see what happens here, but look, it's really a culture change. They need to get things cleaned up there. And Jonathan Gannon and Drew Petzing and Nick Rawls is 29 years old. He is definitely the youngest coordinator in the NFL.
All right, we're going to wrap this all up. We've gone through every team on the schedule. First, I want to tell everybody to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams for the fan, by the fans, their motto. So check them out at phlsportsnation.com. And let's hear a word from our great sponsor, Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you hop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You'll get a great deal. Greg, I just want to finish with you with this. Kind of one quick thought on the one team we haven't talked about. The Eagles, really. I mean, we've talked about their opponents and how they match up. But clearly, the defense, right? The most under-repair part of the Philadelphia Eagles. 2 new starting linebackers, 2 new starting safeties, a new defensive tackle, and some question marks about Jordan Davis and how much he'll be able to play. How much of that, when you combine that with the schedule and the quarterbacks they're going to see this year over the second half, how difficult do you think it'll be to be as dominant as they were last year from a win-loss standpoint?
Well, Geoff, those questions are going to have to be answered by the bye week. If they're not answered by the bye week, then we've got a problem. Look, I think the Eagles front will be very good still. Even if Jordan Davis, regardless of what happens with Davis, although I hear he's made some significant improvements and hopefully he can play 30, 35 snaps or so and maybe even be a pass rusher, which is the hope, clearly. I think the safety situation is wouldn't you say it's open right now?
Oh yeah, wide open. Yeah.
The big concern for them, in my view, is if Bradbury or Slay gets hurt and has to miss any significant amount of time, because as we speak today, later May, they don't really have a backup that you feel good about. I mean, Greedy Williams, everybody loved his talent coming out of LSU, long, athletic, looked like a really good prospect, been hurt a lot, never really developed. I personally don't think Zach McPherson is an outside corner. Then you start getting into Josh Jobe, who was there a year ago. They actually also signed Eli Ricks, who, believe it or not, when he came out of high school, was a big-time recruit, went to LSU. Who they turn out corners, obviously, was supposed to be the next guy. It didn't work. He went to Alabama, where he played pretty well down the stretch, but wasn't drafted because I've heard he's got some concerns off the field. So, if they were to lose Bradbury or Slay for any length of time, I think that has this pretty significant impact on what they can do defensively.
100%. Depth at corner. You can even talk about depth at linebacker and safety, which is wide open. That's some big questions facing the Eagles as they head into training camp and out of OTAs this spring. Greg, it's been awesome. Thank you for the breakdown. Can't wait to have you back in probably just a few weeks. Time goes by faster as we get into the NFC East and break down the meat and potatoes of Dallas, Washington, New York, and of course the Philadelphia Eagles. That's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. For Greg Cosell, Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher, and we thank you as always for flying with us inside the Birds.